take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. We made it to the weekend. It's Friday, January 16th, 2015, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. It's also got to be one of the biggest news days in the war on certain American citizens using non-pharmaceutical, non-alcoholic, tobacco-free drugs, and we are excited to break this news for you today. Earlier this morning, the Washington Post announced that Attorney General Eric Holder is calling for an end to almost all aspects of what is known as the Equitable Sharing Program. This is the federal asset forfeiture program that allows state and local cops to pawn their cases off to the feds and then get 80% of the drug war proceeds back from the cash, the property, the homes, and the valuables seized from marijuana consumers like you and me. That's right, folks. One of the biggest parts of the federal war on drugs ended today, and we are so excited to bring you that news. And analyzing the news today for us at the end of the show, 45 after, we're joined by Epan Thampi. He's probably the nation's foremost expert on asset forfeiture reform. He is the head of Americans for Forfeiture Reform. You can find them at forfeiturereform.com. Although he does have a little loophole that he's found that may not end all of the worst abuses of asset forfeiture. But, you know, the drug war community, LEAP, DPA, everybody I've seen is just tearing up the internets today about this announcement. We are very excited about this. One of the biggest blocks in the Berlin Wall of prohibition has fallen today. Also on the show today, we are going to be speaking with Catherine Sevchenko. She is with thefire.org. They're a free speech organization. They're helping to defend Normal at Iowa State University, who had their t-shirts censored by Iowa State University administration officials over their use of Iowa State logos and the fact they have marijuana leaves and things going on. They've got a free speech lawsuit going on. We're going to get an update on what's happening with that lawsuit in half past the hour when we get to that interview. So two big interviews coming up on today's show. Also in the news today, we've got a whole bunch of news coming from Washington State, just north of us, where my 13-time mighty world champion Green Bay Packers will be facing off against some team in gray that has green highlighter marker on its uniforms, and they're named after a non-existent bird. I forget their name off the top of my head. But anyway, we've got Washington news since we're paying attention to that, and it's not good news. The patriarch of the Kettle Falls Five, Larry Harvey, age 74, I believe, has been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. We'll tell you about this story about how he and his family are being prosecuted by the feds for what is pretty much lawful medical marijuana use in the state of Washington, a state that has also legalized recreational marijuana use. This is an outrage, and we'll tell you all about this story in Behind the Headlines coming up real soon. We'll also have time for a cannabis community chat. We're going to talk about another couple in Washington State. They'll be profiled tonight on ABC News 2020 program. They were busted for giving their 13-year-old son marijuana to help cope with his aggressive tendencies. We'll tell you how that's turned out and where you can see that report tonight on ABC. But first, we'll do our 420 radio news, where we lead with a story from Washington State where they used to have too little marijuana. Now they got too much. We've got the identity of one of the first 10 investors in the Ohio marijuana cartel that's being proposed, a crackdown on edibles in Washington State, legalization of medical marijuana in Kansas. Is it inevitable? One state senator thinks so, and some statistics on Arizona's medical marijuana consumption. How many tons of marijuana did Arizona patients consume last year? You'll be shocked when you hear the numbers. All that's coming up, plus Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111. The Russ Belville Show starts right after these advertising messages.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio is 24-hour marijuana legalization radio.
Sir, do you think there will or should come a time for us to discuss the possibility of legalization, regulation, and control of all drugs, thereby doing away with the violent criminal market as well as a major source of funding for international terrorism? Thank you so much for your time, Mr. President.
Well, I think this is an entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Name the time and place, Mr. President. Radical Russ has been prepping for this debate full-time since 2005. The Russ Belville Show.
Big Daddy thinks.
Funky roller ring. Oh yeah, this is Big Daddy, and I'll be your freakazoid every Thursday night, right here at the Funky Roller Ring. Funky Roller Ring. 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, only on RadicalRuss.com.
This is Radical Russ encouraging you to take a look at the Weed Blog every day. Johnny Green and the staff at the Weed Blog are on top of all the latest developments in the fight to end marijuana prohibition nationwide. You can even get the Weed Blog on your smartphone by installing the Weed Blog app for iPhone and Android. If it's about weed, it's on the Weed Blog, including my original writing. So don't delay. Read the Weed Blog today. It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Russ Belville with your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds.
This is your 420 Radio News for Friday, January 16th, 2015. A big harvest of sun-grown marijuana from eastern Washington last fall flooded the market. Prices are starting to come down in the state's licensed pot shops, but due to the glut, growers are, surprisingly, struggling to sell their marijuana. Some are already worried about going belly up, finding it tougher than expected to make a living in legal weed. State data show that licensed growers had harvested 31,000 pounds of bud as of Thursday, but Washington's relatively few legal pot shops have sold less than 1/5 of that. Many of the state's marijuana users have stuck with the untaxed or much lesser taxed pot that they can get from black market dealers or unregulated medical marijuana dispensaries, limiting how quickly product moves off the shelves of legal stores. So far, there are about 270 licensed growers in Washington, but only about 85 open stores for them to sell to. The first of 10 investors in an Ohio marijuana cartel proposed by Responsible Ohio is James Gould, a Cincinnati sports agent, businessman, and member of the board of directors of numerous organizations, including Build-A-Bear Workshop. Gould has represented a number of professional athletes and also serves on the board of the Corey Stringer Institute. Responsible Ohio is pitching a ballot issue in which 10 investors would be allowed to grow and profit from the wholesale marketing of marijuana for personal use in Ohio. The growers would not sell the marijuana. That would be handled by unaffiliated retailers. The proposal includes a provision for legalizing the use of medical marijuana as well. The backers of the marijuana amendment have not released the text of the proposed ballot constitutional amendment or many details. That could come next week, they say. Critics call the plan cannabis capitalism and charge that it is focused entirely on profit by a monopoly controlled by wealthy investors. Marijuana edibles are blamed for a recent spike of child overdose cases, and now Washington State's King County health officials are calling for a pot candy crackdown. The effort to bring the unregulated medical marijuana commerce in line with the state's legal recreational market could result in a ban on many of the products currently sold at dispensaries. The goal is to eliminate things that would be, quote, especially appealing to children, end quote. There is no list of such items, but pot-infused cotton candy, gummy bears, lollipops, and similar items would likely fall into this category, according to staff at the State Liquor Control Board, which regulates the recreational market. There is also a bill pending in Olympia to eliminate sales of dried, smokable marijuana from medical marijuana dispensaries altogether, limiting dispensary sales to edibles, tinctures, and concentrates. Should both measures pass, critics contend patients would be left with nothing but bland, unappealing sources of cannabis medicine. Legalization of medical marijuana in Kansas is inevitable, Kansas Senator David Haley told a crowd of about 30 supporters at a rally in the rotunda of the Capitol on Thursday afternoon. Haley, a Democrat from Kansas City, and Representative Gail Finney, a Democrat from Wichita, have introduced companion bills in the House and Senate, SB 9 and House Bill 2011, that would allow medicinal use of marijuana. We have to get this done, Haley said. Quote, everyone in this Capitol knows that one day, medical marijuana will be available in every one of the 50 states. We know that. The question is, will Kansas be the 24th state or will it be the 50th? End quote. Finney said legalizing medical marijuana and taxing it would generate an additional $1.3 million in revenue for the state. They have at least one Republican lawmaker on board. Representative J. Basil Dannenbaum of Ellenwood spoke in favor of the legislation at the rally. Arizona's more than 63,000 medical marijuana patients ate, drank, or smoked more than 10 tons of marijuana last year. It comes out on average to the equivalent of one joint per patient per day, though clearly some are using more and some are using less. And figuring an estimated price of $350 an ounce, that meant Arizonans spent about $112 million on marijuana. A new report Thursday from the Arizona Department of Health Services also finds 85 dispensaries were up and running last year. More than 2/3 of qualifying patients are male. The average patient made 17 transactions during the year. The new report shows that one patient actually made 341 trips to a dispensary close to every day of the year. This has been your 420 Radio News for Friday, January 16th, 2015. I'm Russ Belville. Go Pack Go.
420 Radio, the activist radio station.
The Green Cross has been an amazing source of cannabis medicines for my pain management. Whether I need edibles or tinctures or topicals, I'm able to combine the 2 or 3 to give me really successful pain control.
It's the delivery service that Green Cross provides is just incredible. You get your medicine and it's delivered by a person that you trust.
Whether we come to you or you come to us, the Green Cross delivers.
International Cannabis Business Conference is coming to the Hyatt Regency Hotel in San Francisco, California, February 15th and 16th, 2015. Don't miss this exclusive opportunity to hear from the experts on the future of marijuana commerce, including scientists like Dr. Carl Hart, Dr. Amanda Ryman, and Dr. Stanton Peel, policy experts like Ethan Nadelman from Drug Policy Alliance, Anthony Johnson from Oregon's legalization campaign, travel author Rick Steves from Washington's legalization campaign, and California legalization pioneer Dale Sky Jones. Business experts like Harborside's Steve D'Angelo, ArcView Group's Troy Dayton, and UFCW union leader Dan Rush. Cannabis journalists like Ricardo Baca, Steve Bloom, and Doug Fine, and California Republican Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, plus many, many more. Tickets are on sale now at internationalcbc.com, but hurry, last year's conference in Portland, Oregon was a sellout. International Cannabis Business Conference, San Francisco, California, February 15th and 16th, internationalcbc.com.
Welcome back, everyone. 14 after the hour, and today in Behind the Headlines, we're taking a look at ABC News 2020 program that airs tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. The story concerns Washington parents that use marijuana who are accused of child abuse. The couple are Jesse and Vicka Thompson. They're from Sedro-Woolley, Washington. And of course, in Washington state, marijuana use is legal, as well as medical marijuana use having an affirmative defense in the state. Both are medical users. Jesse is a cancer survivor who uses for pain, and Vicka uses for arthritis and a nervous condition. In addition, the couple run a medical marijuana dispensary dispensary and garden store called The Grow Shop. Now, they are parents to 2 children, a 5-year-old named Jerry and a 13-year-old Sohani, who is Vika's son from a previous marriage. But they insist that being marijuana consumers does not mean they can't also be good parents. Vika told 2020, quote, "It just means I have an elevated mood. It doesn't mean I'm incapacitated or that I can't think straight. I'm on pot right now, and I'm able to parent," end quote. But of course, as these cases often do, it went awry. The Thompsons had an employee that they had to let go. That employee went and narked on them to Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services told them, or she told Child Protective Services, according to Jesse, that they are feeding our children marijuana all the time, that they have access to it in our home and in our business. Within days of that call, Child Protective Services got a hold of Jerry's half-brother, Sohani, the 13-year-old, who told authorities that his mom had fed him a goo ball. Goo ball is a peanut butter raisin ball with some marijuana in it, some concentrate in it. And the problem with Sohani is that he has these aggressive tendencies. He's a teenage boy and gets just a little too aggressive and violent and mean, according to his mom. And she says treating him with the cannabis helps to relieve those aggressive tendencies and get him to, quote, "look inside and relax," end quote. Now, CPS didn't react immediately, but the city did. They shut down their business, the Grow Shop, and CPS requested a meeting with the Thompsons. Jesse didn't want to go into a CPS meeting without a lawyer present, which is a very, very wise move. So CPS didn't reschedule the meeting. Instead, they just took their little boy away and made him live with an aunt. The only way they could visit him is to visit him at the local CPS office. Jesse was devastated by having his 5-year-old taken away, saying, quote, "It's destroying me. I can't not be with my son. He is all that matters," end quote. And the older boy, the 13-year-old Sohani, went to live with his father full-time, leading Vika to say, quote, "I felt like my heart might stop," end quote. The Thompsons went to court to fight Child Protective Services, which had the 5-year-old Jerry take a hair follicle drug test. When the results came back, Jerry tested positive for THC. The couple were accused of posing a risk to Jerry's well-being by feeding marijuana to him. They denied they feed marijuana to the 5-year-old. They admitted it for the 13-year-old and his aggressive tendencies, but Vika also did say that she used a marijuana salve to treat a rash on the 5-year-old's skin, a salve which, of course, would not put him at risk of getting high. Now, they had weeks and weeks of supervised meetings and numerous hearings, and eventually the court commissioners decided to allow Jesse and Vika to take Jerry back home. The commissioner stated he saw no evidence of harm, even though there was evidence of THC in Jerry's body. The couple's attorney, Jennifer Ani, said, quote, "The law says there has to be serious physical harm. A child who ingests an edible is not going to suffer serious physical harm. They may go to sleep. They may be a little out of it. Children can't be removed, however, because of bad judgment. If they could, lots of people wouldn't have kids because we all make mistakes," end quote. Now, in returning Jerry back to the home, the court commissioner set strict conditions, which included that he's not exposed to marijuana smoke or marijuana edibles in any form. And if he is to test positive again, the court commissioner said he would not be allowed to live with the couple. Vika said, quote, "We're going to hide the marijuana. I definitely feel like I shouldn't give it to children." But, she added, if it was legal to give marijuana to children, she would do so. Quote, "If I lived somewhere else and a doctor was looking over me, telling me that it was okay, then I would think, yeah, it's totally safe, especially to put salve on a cut or a rash," end quote. And folks, when I read stories like this, I can't help but to recall my own childhood when having an ear infection, I remember my grandfather blowing cigarette smoke down my ears. I also recall numerous parents that I've known who have given their children small doses of whiskey or alcohol to deal with teething pain or when they're colicky and won't sleep. If we had to have CPS called on every couple that used their own judgment to treat their children in a way that might not be considered politically correct. Like the attorney Jennifer Ani said, very few people would have kids in their homes anymore. It's time to seriously reform Child Protective Services and these gross misactions against cannabis-using patients.
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking.
Well, I didn't. After a 3-day abstinence from marijuana, the Weed Fairy stopped by, everybody. Hooray! The Weed Fairy stopped by. So I'll get to join you here on this 420 break. 420 in Denver, that is. Well, hell, it's 420 everywhere. It's the weekend. Light 'em if you got 'em. We'll be right back.
420 Radio, the home of marijuana experts.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Fun.
Oh, hello. I'm Big Daddy, and I want you to join me at the Funky Roller Ring. We're partying hard over here, baby. So stop on by, check out the funky grooves, and shake your booty too.
Don't get in too deep, brother. Don't get in too heavy. Don't get so you can move about whenever you get ready.
Get.Buzz. .Buzz is the internet platform that fuels community interest, excitement, and new experiences. .Buzz is the premier online destination for internet users seeking the latest news on a variety of topics. .Buzz appeals to groups active in blogging, communications, journalism, advertising, and marketing. .Buzz offers registrants a stronger alternative to the shrinking namespace of existing top-level domain names, such as .com, .net, and .org. Get your name now at get.buzz. The cannabis community is a diverse set of people from all walks of life, conservative and liberal, black and white, straight and gay, rich and poor, and everyone in between. Learn more about the people we are freeing from adult marijuana prohibition in our Cannabis Community Chat.
Welcome back, everyone. 22 and a half after the hour. And in today's chat, I want to talk a little bit about the absurd and tragic cruelty of this war on drugs. And you can't find a better example these days than the case that we're calling the Kettle Falls Five. It involves Larry Harvey, who's age 71, and the rest of his family, his wife Rhonda, their son Roland, Roland's wife Michelle, and a close family friend, Jason Zucker. The five of them are facing federal marijuana charges for growing about 70 cannabis plants for their own medical use at their rural home near Kettle Falls. The family maintains that the pot patch complied with the state medical marijuana law, which does allow a collective garden of up to 45 plants, though they did find 70 there. If it was 245 plant patches for two different families, though, that would be 90 plants. Maybe that's their defense there. Regardless, we've got a state in which medical marijuana has been legal since 1998, and recreational marijuana was made legal in 2012, yet the federal government has decided to charge each of these people with multiple felonies, including manufacturing, possession, and distribution of marijuana, as well as possession of a firearm and furtherance of drug trafficking. Now, the family contends that they have numerous firearms at the house, but they're in the wilderness of northeastern Washington state near the U.S.-Canada border. Middle of nowhere, they use their weapons for hunting and defense. But that doesn't jibe with what the federal prosecutors believe, which is the mere fact that they were exercising their constitutionally recognized Second Amendment rights means they must have been drug trafficking. A 71-year-old man and his wife all of them who are sick people using marijuana as medicine, well, they must be drug traffickers because they got a hunting rifle. It's just ridiculous. Well, now to add tragedy to this absurdity, we learn from a story on Huffington Post that Larry Harvey, age 71, just a year older than my dad, a year younger than my dad, I should say, who's facing 10 years in prison, which for him at age 71 could potentially be a life sentence. Now we know that it will be a life sentence. Larry Harvey, age 71, has been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer of the pancreas that has begun to spread to his liver. His wife, Rhonda, said in a written statement, quote, "Larry's health has been going downhill since this case began. This summer, he was hospitalized for 10 days due to blood poisoning. That was the first sign of trouble with his pancreas. Larry took a sudden turn for the worse in December, and we learned on his birthday that he has pancreatic cancer. Doctors have since confirmed that it is stage 4 and has started to spread to his liver. Larry had his second round of chemotherapy this Wednesday, followed by a blood transfusion on Thursday. We're trying to stay focused on his recovery, but the stress of a trial in February makes this struggle even harder than it already is." End quote. And Steph Shearer from Americans for Safe Access, the nation's leading lobby for medical cannabis patients, said, quote, "It's especially shameful for the federal government to continue prosecuting 71-year-old Larry Harvey, who has now been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer that has metastasized to his liver. To make matters worse, the Department of Justice has prevented Larry for more than 2 years from using marijuana, a medicine that works effectively to treat his cancer and numerous other serious health conditions while he awaits trial," end quote. And I can't help but think in this case, it reminds me of Tommy Chong. Tommy Chong's about the same age, and he said that when he was busted for bongs in the 2000s and sent to prison for 9 months, that's when his cancer began to develop and spread. And I can't help but think, knowing what we know about cannabis use and THC's ability to set cancer cells into apoptosis, programmed cell death, that the Department of Justice prosecuting this man and forbidding him from using the best, not only medicine for his pain, but preventative medicine we may discover for his cancer, is an 8th Amendment violation. It's a cruel and unusual punishment. This is punishing a man who hasn't even been convicted yet by denying him life-saving medicine. It's just an outrage and further underscores why we have to keep fighting. Washington State's got medical marijuana. Washington State's got recreational marijuana, and it doesn't go far enough. Not until the entire 50 states and the federal government recognize this can any patient effectively be safe. And this is why I continue to tell people who support medical marijuana legislation that the real fight is now for legalization. The real fight is for legalization, because until we have a situation where we don't divide cannabis consumers based on how healthy they are, there will always be this need for the prosecutors to go after someone, and some patient will suffer. If it's not a pancreatic cancer patient, it's a depression patient, it's an anxiety patient, it's someone who can't afford or qualify for medical marijuana protection. That's who legalization's for.
420 Radio, fighting prohibition since 2012.
Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks are far less than those posed by legal drugs. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com.
Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
Welcome back, everyone. 1:30, and today we've got a very interesting case to talk about with respect to free speech on our college campuses. And joining us to talk about it from thefire.org is Catherine Sevchenko. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I sure hope I got the pronunciation right. Is it Sevchenko?
Shevchenko, yes. You did a beautiful job.
Wow, my Russian-speaking friends helped me out with that, so I want to make sure I got that right.
You owe them a beer.
I guess I do. Wouldn't it be vodka, though? No, I digress. First of all, before we get into the case, tell us about your organization, The Fire.
FIRE stands for the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education, and our mission is very simple. We help students and faculty defend their free speech rights on college campuses to make sure that they can say whatever they want to say and advocate for any cause they believe in.
And you know, you would think college campuses would be one of the easiest places to defend free speech, but in your experience, how difficult has it been?
It is depressingly difficult. We have a database of about 450 universities, and we survey their rules and regulations, their speech codes, and over half have what we call red light speech codes, which means that you just read them and they substantially limit free speech, and we consider them to be unconstitutional.
All right. So the group is thefire.org on the internet if you want to learn more. And Catherine, for today, of course, the case that I'm interested in here reminds me of a case that I covered years and years ago. I used to be the outreach coordinator for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, and Normal at the University of Georgia got into trouble for using some University of Georgia landmarks and logos and such in their items that they were having for sale and such. We got a similar case here, I guess. Iowa State University. Tell our listeners what's going on there.
Yeah, Iowa State University, the Normal chapter there, wanted to make T-shirts just so that they could have them as part of their advocacy. And they, in fact, were successful in doing so. Iowa has a policy that if you use any trademarked item, basically their logo, but also including the initials ISU, they've trademarked that, you have to get approval from the university. So they did that, and then the founder of the group was featured in an article in the Des Moines Register about legalization of marijuana wearing the T-shirt. And the school got a lot of heat from the state legislators and from the public saying, why is Iowa State, standing up for pot? And so the school rescinded their approval of the T-shirt, and then proceeded to refuse to approve subsequent designs because they had a cannabis leaf on them.
Oh my
so
goodness.
The students came to FIRE and said, this doesn't seem right to us. Is this okay? And we said, absolutely not.
The first thing that stood out when you were describing that to me is I'm originally from Idaho. I attended Boise State University, but across the state is Idaho State University, their ISU. How can you trademark ISU?
I'm not a trademark lawyer, but it is, Iowa State University. I mean, essentially, they want to be able to control how they are portrayed.
Okay.
And it's a quality assurance thing. They don't want just anybody making, T-shirts and that sort of stuff. But it's also a way to censor the messages of students when they feel so inclined.
Well, absolutely. And we are talking about Iowa, which is one of the most cannabis-phobic states in the country, has usually the lowest use rates in the country, and is the home to Iowa State Representative Clell Bodler, a man who lied about having hemorrhoids to get a medical marijuana card in California to show Iowa legislators how fake it was. So we're talking about a real charged political climate here. What has been the results so far in this court case?
The results so far have been excellent for the students. The university filed a motion to dismiss the case, which basically means they tried to throw it out of court. They went in with an argument saying, no, this has nothing to do with the First Amendment. This is a trademark issue, and obviously we have the right to control our trademarks. The judge kind of did the judicial equivalent of a snort to that argument. And then they also were trying to argue, or they are arguing, that in fact this is government speech. That is, when you see a student wearing a T-shirt that says ISU normal, people will be confused and think that it's the university that's speaking rather than the student group.
Gotcha.
And therefore they should be able to control the message.
I remember that coming up back when I was dealing with college chapters, that many of them wouldn't call themselves so-and-so state university normal. They'd call themselves normal at so-and-so state university to try to avoid that. Is that part of this deal or not?
Well, the school does have a rule that if you want to be a registered student organization, you have to have ISU in your name somewhere.
Oh, so they kind of want it both ways, it seems.
Yeah, so that way, if you're going to do something that they don't like, they can then turn around and say, oh, look, we're not censoring you, we're just protecting our trademark.
Gotcha.
That seems to be, the system that they set up, and so far they have been unsuccessful in convincing the judge that that is, a valid argument. But so the judge said he denied the motion to dismiss, which means that, and I apologize for the legal jargon, the case is now moving into discovery, which is basically when the parties exchange documents, and also when the parties and the witnesses give depositions, which is basically they answer questions posed by the lawyers under oath.
Gotcha. We're speaking with Catherine Sevchenko. The group is thefire.org, and they're defending collegiate free speech all across this country. Check out thefire.org for more information. And Catherine, so they're just saying this is trademark issue. They're not trying to step into the landmine of saying a pot leaf is illegal or marijuana is Schedule 1 or anything like that?
Well, it's interesting because when they rescinded the approval of the first T-shirt design, they then went back and they changed their own rules. And they then said, no, you can't use an Iowa State trademark to advocate for any activity that is illegal or unhealthy. And of course, advocating for marijuana legalization, I mean, it's a political policy issue. I mean, that is speech that falls into the core of First Amendment protection. The idea that advocating for marijuana use is somehow advocating unsafe or dangerous behavior, as the lawyers pointed out, well, Iowa State puts its logos on the football helmets, and certainly playing football and with the risk of concussion is not exactly, a safe behavior. The other thing that the judge picked up on is that Iowa State has a BDSM club called Cuffs,
Okay.
And they are allowed to use the ISU logo to the great credit, I think, of the university. But the question was, well, they say on their website, if you don't do this activity properly, it can be dangerous. So why is it that advocating for marijuana legalization is advocating unsafe behavior, whereas practicing BDSM is not?
Yeah. Now, is it a legal hair to split between advocating for the reform of a law versus advocating for the use of something that would be legal after you reform the law? In other words, Normal at Iowa State is just saying it ought not be illegal to use marijuana. They're not really saying, hey, everybody, go use marijuana.
Yeah, you cannot incite illegal activity. I mean, their court cases and First Amendment lawyers go back and forth about what incitement is, but that's not what Normal is doing. Normal wanted to put their message on a T-shirt that said, legalize marijuana. And I mean, marijuana is legal in a few states. This is, it's obviously a policy debate. And as I said, that's what the First Amendment is all about. It is to protect unpopular speech about critical issues. And I think this, goes into the bullseye of, the target of the First Amendment and what it's there for.
What is the timetable on the case, and are the students being are their T-shirts suspended at this point? Are they still able to work while the trial's ongoing?
Yeah, so the trial is currently scheduled for December 2015. The discovery process, they always allow a couple of months for that because the depositions, the interviews have to be scheduled and everybody has to go through the documentation. And then the lawyers wrangle around and file motions. But we anticipate, unless this settles, that yes, it will go to trial just about a year from now. In the meantime, the ISU Normal has a couple of T-shirt designs that have been approved, and so they can produce those T-shirts as they see fit. But if they want to put a cannabis leaf on a T-shirt at this point, they are unable to do so.
Well, Catherine Sevchenko from thefire.org, thank you for your perspective on this case. And before we let you go, is there any other contact information or ways that our listeners could help or contribute to this cause?
Sure. I mean, if any of your listeners know of students, who are advocating for marijuana legalization or anything else, and they're having trouble, they should get in touch with us at standup@thefire.org. That's one word. And we would love to hear about their case and see if we can help out, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're out there doing that. American universities need to be the number one place where free speech is heard and disseminated, and thefire.org is making that happen. Check them out online. Email standup@thefire.org. Catherine Sevchenko, thanks for joining us here on the Russ Belville Show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, when we come back, we're talking with Eapen Thampy from Americans for Forfeiture Reform on the landmark decision by Attorney General Eric Holder to end most of the Equitable sharing program. Stick around. We're back after this advertising break and the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, your ticket to the Boston Freedom Rally. Are you in the market for portable vaporizers now? Get online to vapes.buzz, the quick and easy link to portablevaporizers.now.com. Vapes.buzz has everything you're looking for, including vape pens, herbal vaporizers, e-juice, parts, accessories, and more. Visit vapes.buzz and save 5% instantly, or give them a call at 866-264-2415. Vapes.buzz. Get vaping, baby! the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
About 68% of kids ages 12 to 17 are being admitted to drug treatment for marijuana. Marijuana, it's harmful to youth.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org. When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com. Reforming America's marijuana prohibition laws takes education, lobbying, and voting. From Washington, D.C. to your state capital to your city hall, marijuana law reform involves all levels of civic life. Learn how you can make your impact with elected officials as we take a look at our government at work.
Hello? Welcome back, everyone. Joining us today on the telephone for Government at Work, we've got Eapen Thampy from Americans for Forfeiture Reform. You can learn about them at forfeiturereform.com. Eapen, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Russ. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, although I have a feeling I might not be as fantastic after the interview. Apparently, you found a loophole here, but before we get to that, the big news today is Attorney General Eric Holder announced sweeping changes to the Equitable sharing program. Give our listeners kind of a thumbnail sketch of what asset forfeiture and equitable sharing is all about, and then we'll talk about the announcement.
Well, in the 1980s, Congress created federal asset forfeiture as a enforcement tool for the war on drugs, and basically the way it works is that the federal government says it can seize and forfeit your property if it thinks that you have been, that the property has been involved in a crime. You don't have to be charged, convicted, or tried in a court of law for the government to take everything you own and keep it and use it to fund law enforcement agencies. So that's the issue. So the equitable sharing aspect of it is that so you have a federal agency with this immense power of property seizure and forfeiture, and now they can partner with a state or local law enforcement agency. So the state or local law enforcement agency can bring a seizure to the feds. The feds can do the liquidation of the property. They can turn it into cash. And then they just write the local or state law enforcement agency a check. And so in this way, state and local law enforcement agencies can access a lot of forfeiture revenue that they couldn't under state law, because usually state laws are more restrictive and have more protection for property owners. So this is a fundamental economic engine of the war on drugs. So, you know, they seize property to fund drug law enforcement, and that becomes the motivation for doing it over time, and it's a very corrupt system.
So this is basically a way for them to do an end around on a state that has reformed its asset forfeiture laws, or even for that matter, legalized marijuana, right?
Well, it's much bigger than that. This is a way for the federal government to commandeer agencies that should be sovereign to a state, you know, because now they can pay the state law enforcement agency to focus on what the federal government wants to do, not on what state law is or what the community of that law enforcement agency wants to. So this is at the heart of it, you know, as well as, you know, whatever a legislature or elected body has decided, you know, money should be allocated. So, you know, at the heart of it, you know, the civil forfeiture law at the federal level is a big way to gut the power of voters and state governments at the expense of, you know, this, you know, federal boondoggle that we call, you know, drug prohibition.
Wow. And I know here in my home state of Oregon, the last forfeiture report that was posted showed $2.5 million in cash and $3.6 billion in assets. What's the scale of this on the national level?
On the national level, the federal government is seizing billions of dollars a year. I don't know what the statistics for last year were, but I wouldn't be surprised. But I think the balance of the federal asset forfeiture fund this year is about $8 billion. They're seizing $6 to $8 billion, maybe a little bit more on an annual level. That's an immense amount of money.
All right. So this egregious violation of our democracy has been going on for decades now. And today, Attorney General Eric Holder announced what seems to be the end of most of it, saying that they won't partner up, allow the local and state cops to partner up on this. Tell us about the announcement and the loophole you found in it.
Yeah, so I'm very afraid that a lot of people in drug policy are being misled by what the policy change actually is. So the way it's being presented is that the Attorney General is limiting the use of equitable sharing, but he put a big loophole in it that basically swallows the policy change. So here's what the order actually says. The order says that if you're a state and state or local law enforcement agency, the only way that you can have access to unrestricted federal asset forfeiture powers and revenue is through partnership with a federal agency. So this policy does prohibit state agencies acting on their own to bring an asset forfeiture to the feds, and that is designed to maybe correct abuses that we've seen in some jurisdictions, most notably Bell Harbor, Florida. Bell Harbor, they had a police agency, a law enforcement agency there that was setting informants to California and New York, all over the country, setting up drug deals that people would come to Bell Harbor with cash. The local cops would seize the money, and they were bringing in $10 to $15 million a year this way. And the feds eventually said, you guys are way too corrupt, we're going to stop this. So what Holder's policy change today means is that a town like Bell Harbor, Florida, could not unilaterally start this kind of asset forfeiture activity. Instead of the local agency performing all the investigative work and doing all the things, they would have to now partner with a federal agency. And that's a little bit more difficult because federal agencies have fewer resources and not as many officers.
So it's really just moving this from the state or local cops by themselves to kind of incentivize them to partner up in a multi-jurisdictional task force along with the feds. Am I following it right?
Yes, exactly. That is exactly what's going on here. Eric Holder just increased the incentive for state and local law enforcement agencies to make these partnerships with the feds because that's the only way they get federal asset forfeiture money on an unrestricted basis.
Okay. So as this is being portrayed by many in drug law reform, even myself, when I first announced when I said this is like a big brick of the Berlin Wall of Prohibition coming down, is that going to be the practical effect? I mean, is there at least a symbolic effect from this taking place? Is it going to help any?
I think the only effect here is really symbolic. And that is because, for the Attorney General to say, I'm restricting the use of asset forfeiture is kind of a nod to the transpartisan consensus that's emerged that this system is responsible for, an epidemic of rights violations and property seizures that are more in tune with the Soviet Union than the United States of America. But so there's that political reality that I think Holder is acknowledging, but he's very clever in crafting the exception to, kind of swallow the policy. So nothing is really changing here in a very fundamental sense. But the policy change itself is an acknowledgement of how far the political reality is from the government's position.
We're speaking with Eapen Thampy from Americans for Forfeiture Reform. You can learn more about their cause at forfeiturereform.com. So, Eapen, what would you like to see happen next? I mean, Eric Holder's already quit the AG job. He's just still there because no one's been appointed to take his place. And it kind of seems like he's trying to do some legacy building here. He's also announced some things about mass incarceration and so forth. What would you like to see Holder do next on this issue?
Well, I'd like to see Eric Holder do a lot of things. I'd like to see him unschedule marijuana. I'd like him to end the equitable sharing program altogether. But, if wishes were wagons, I'd be, so the saying goes. I really have no faith in Eric Holder and the new Attorney General nominee, Loretta Lynch, to make the necessary policy changes. Congress has to act. We have to build a bipartisan coalition in Congress that is invested in the fact that civil forfeiture has to end, that we cannot let law enforcement agencies profit from their activities, and that we can't let the federal government essentially give state and local law enforcement officials an excuse to ignore their own state laws.
Making changes here at the federal level, it's such this big lumbering bureaucratic beast. Sometimes it takes forever to turn it around. Are there positive things happening at the state level you can tell us about when it comes to asset forfeiture?
Minnesota's done a lot of excellent reforms lately. Oregon, I think, has some good things for other, especially in terms of the reporting statute you guys have, has a good law for you guys to emulate, for a lot of people to emulate. I'd really like to see a state go ahead and ban civil forfeiture entirely and kind of lead the way. And in some aspects, these battles are much easier to fight at the state level because you can demonstrate very easily how egregious the abuses are, and I think that really makes an impact in state legislatures.
And speaking of abuses, we've got one of our live listeners in the chat room who mentions that Florida cops got $15,000 from me, only claimed $5,000 though. They pocketed $10,000. How much corruption is endemic in this system?
I mean, the whole system is rotten through and through. The only solution is to really abolish it and start over with a better system, a post-prohibition system. And, hopefully we have, in this movement, the strength and the intellectual fortitude to propose those solutions and to work for their enactment. So, you guys in Oregon only took a big step forward, in November by ending marijuana prohibition, and, that's one step in the puzzle. There's a lot more to go, though.
Okay. Epen Thampy is with Americans for Forfeiture Reform. And before we let you go, Epen, do you have any contact info or websites you'd like to help people out with, get some more information, or maybe even contribute to your cause?
Well, you can make a donation and visit the website at forfeiturereform.com. You can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/forfeiturereform. And if you're interested in a quote from me about this policy change, you can email me at eapen@forfeiturereform.com. eapen@forfeiturereform.com. It's Epen Thampy from Americans for Forfeiture Reform. And, as far as our criminal justice system goes, this is one of the, as far as I'm concerned, no-brainer. It seems odd that our government should be able to steal from people without proving they've committed even a crime in the case of civil asset forfeiture. We thank you so much for the hard work that you're doing, and thanks for joining us again here on the show. Thanks, Russ.
All right. So Epen Thampy, good friend of the show, and it just reminds me that there's so many aspects of this, of ending the war on drugs, that we all have to be fighting for. There is a niche for you. No matter what area you want to get involved in, there is a activist group that is working hard to help you in that cause. Asset forfeiture reform. We spoke with Catherine Sevchenko on free speech at the college campus level. There's medical marijuana. There is so much to get involved with, and this is the time to get involved. Prohibition is ending. The Berlin Wall of the drug war is falling brick by brick by brick. Never been a better time to get involved. Check out your local NORML chapter, your SSDP chapter, your Americans for Safe Access chapter. Get involved with law enforcement against prohibition. There are many ways to challenge your activist agenda. That's all the time we got for today in Hour 1, but stay tuned for Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111. A couple of stories we're working on for Hour 2 include Native Americans in Minnesota exploring whether or not they want to grow marijuana, and Mother Jones Magazine on the I Gots Mine syndrome in California, plus a look at legalization in Vermont. It's all coming up next on Toker Talk Radio. I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, Tokers. Go Pack, go!
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you